What you are about to hear will blow your mind and give you six-pack abs without even exercising.
Pull up a bar stool and relax.
Hey, who wants to have some fun?
You've made it to Happy Hour with John Gaskins.
Oh, no. Not again.
Get ready for entertaining local and regional sports talk that will change your life. Or not.
And by the way, when you're telling these little stories, here's a good idea. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener.
Here's your host, John Gaskins.
Here's Johnny. Hello! Ah!
I'm back, baby! I'm back!
Hey, happy hour on a Monday. Wow, big news, a Friday news dump. UND's football program on probation. Headline, we all tilted our heads back and go, whoa! And then you read the story, you realize what happened, it sounds bad. Oh my gosh, tampering with the recruit that hadn't jumped in the portal. And what do we make of it? And I've got a pretty good answer now that the dust has settled. I'd say it's not as big of a deal as the headline makes it, but it's UND. It's a football program that is trending up, landing a better quality recruit in Eric Schmidt's second year. North Dakota State not in the valley anymore. The door's wide open, and this is the slight slip on the banana peel. Probably won't affect them on the field this year, but maybe next year in the years to come. And I'll explain all that, get perspective on the penalties that the Hawks were hit with and which one would hurt the most. Good to be here. SiouxFallsLive.com is the place to go to watch our shows. This is a great listen. We appreciate you consuming this wherever you get your podcasts to listen to while you're going for a run, driving, on the road, hitting the gym. But it's a good TV product. Cordell Wright's our video producer. And, it's just a little bit more exciting to watch. Ed Whiting is our guest today. Sioux Falls Jefferson, back-to-back state championships in softball. They were perfect this year, 23-0 with an average score of 12-1. And Ed Whiting, speaking of slipping, just kind of slipped into softball coaching 15 years ago. And now he's the best out there, has the best program out there. And oh, by the way, one of the most respected coaching minds in high school football in Sioux Falls. He's the DC at Jefferson, and he talks a little bit about his second year with Eric Struck in this conversation as well. A little bit later, Justin Jefferson spoke about catching footballs from Kyler Murray for the first time, and I thought what he said gave us a crack. That was very telling about who he'd like the Vikings quarterback to be this year. But let's start with North Dakota. Again, it happens on Friday, and when it happens on Friday, we call these news dumps. These are the times when news comes out from organizations where they don't really want you to notice. But you can't help but notice if you're here in South Dakota, if you're in the Mo Valley. And again, everybody's got a much easier path to winning Mo Valley titles, to getting really good playoff seeds or clinching playoff berths without North Dakota State on the schedule. Say what you want about losing the rivalry, a premier game, a big ticket seller, all that with the Bison. Every team like the Jacks and the Yotes. Wow. The door is far more ajar. And UND's right up there. This is a program that last year under Eric Schmidt was 8-6. But if you look closer, they won their first playoff game in the FCS, at least in the last 13 years. First playoff win. This was their best win total in 10 years, and it's the first time they had made the second round of the FCS playoffs in 10 years. So they are cooking with gas, and when you consider just how close they came to being that much better, I'm talking about winning the Valley, being a top 8 national seed, being a national championship contender in FCS last year. Yes, UND. Remember, K-State beat them by a field goal. They lost it by 1 point at Montana, the national runner-up. They lost to NDSU, USD, and SDSU, the three best teams in the Valley, each by 5 points, or the three best programs, I should say. So all 5 of the regular season losses by 5 or fewer points to high-quality teams, including Kansas State. They just couldn't finish. There was just one play, 2 plays here or there. UND is close. And it should be the case going forward, despite this tampering, this fine, this probation. It doesn't hit them in 2026, but let's get into it. And first review what happened, okay? So UND's punishment included a $25,000 fine, a 1-week ban on recruiting communications, a 3% reduction in official paid visits, 3 1-week bans on unofficial visits, a 1-year show cause order for their quarterbacks coach. And that would be Travis Steps, a very highly respected veteran quarterbacks coach at this level. UND accepted with responsibility of the violation. So what did Steps do? According to the NCAA, in a violation reported by UND to the NCAA, he knowingly communicated with a student athlete at another school. This would be Riverside Junior College in California, whom he had previously recruited out of high school. The majority of these conversations occurred in the fall before the notification of transfer window for football had opened, and it's centered on the student athlete inquiring about transferring to UND, offering to send Steps his practice film and providing his academic transcript. All illegal. You can't do that. The violations were uncovered when Steps sent the transcript to the UND compliance department. So he actually said, is this okay? And they said, no, it's not. We got to report this to the NCAA. So this is something that Mark Farley of Northern Iowa really complained about. Tampering is usually what we think of the big league schools are doing with our schools, like the Jacks and the Yotes and the Hawks at the FCS level. They start finding out who the best players are at this level. And before the transfer portal window opens and these kids jump in, they're getting a hold of these kids and their agents. They're telling them how much money they can play for. Everybody does it. And yet we have FCS on JUCO crime here. I mean, junior colleges are used to. Their players have to move on. They only get a year or two there anyway. So UND is basically penalized for penalizing itself. The University of Iowa reported a few of these types of violations off of the 2023 season and had to have 4 of those wins vacated recently. And so the moral of the story is just don't report your violations, because apparently these are things that everybody does. And this is another case of the NCAA picking on the little guy, it appears. Now, again, the UND did it to themselves. They did something they were not supposed to do. Then they actually reported it. And with all that's going on that is wrong and screwed up and corrupt and outrageous about how out of line, ridiculous, absurd the college football game is getting without guardrails and rules, and how the NCAA has no leadership, no backbone, no control of any of this. It's just the Wild West, and kids are being tampered with all the time. And UND and a JUCO kid, it's just a classic case of the buffoonery of the organization, the tone deafness of it. And here is Tom Miller, who's been covering this for the Grand Forks Herald. I thought he made a wonderful analogy of what this violation is all about.
I think there's just a general vibe that UND might have been going 56 and a 55, yeah, right, while the rest of Division I football is whizzing around at 120. So it was put on a tee for the NCAA. North Dakota did it to themselves, made a mistake, owned up to it. I don't know. Yeah, I'd be curious if this situation played out at 100 Division I schools. I'm not saying it's damning of the compliance department or it's virtuous of the compliance department, but I'd like to know if 100 schools had this exact situation happen, how it would play out. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of an eye roll involved here that, you look at the calendar and all the, all the flight trips that are lined up immediately. And you kind of wonder, boy, how'd that take place if no conversations were happening?
Correct.
So yeah, it's a silly system that everybody's playing it.
So that was Tom Miller, Grand Forks Herald, on Dom Izzo's Hot Mic show in Fargo today. So this is what they did. And again, their penalty, a $25,000 fine, which is nothing, a 3% reduction in unofficial paid visits, and the 3 1-week bans on unofficial visits. It's not a lot. It shouldn't affect them in 2026 on the field, but it affects their recruiting going forward. And so that's where we ask the question, how big of a blow is this to a program that's trending up, but not quite there after so many close calls on the field last year and no NDSU schedule on the schedule this year? Because it just feels like this is a program that's been not bad, but certainly irrelevant in North Dakota, with NDSU just dominating the recruiting battles and, the nation, winning 10 out of 14 national championships before last year, and mostly dominating the Fighting Hawks on the field. And yet Eric Schmidt has made this program plenty more relevant, plenty of juice behind it. They're landing different types of recruits. This little violation could set back recruiting to the point that, hey, 1, 2, 3 recruits might make a difference. Now it's out there. They've got the rap sheet on them that they have violated, that they have tampered. And even though Tom Miller, you heard it, this is nothing. This is stuff schools do all the time. They just had the decency and I guess the stupidity to report it. Will parents, will players now look at UND as a place that, I don't know, they play dirty. They don't play by the rules. They look at the headline and they don't dig further into it. And they don't realize these penalties aren't very harsh. But again, when you're battling for recruits up here at a time when there's never been a more opportune time in the FCS era for a school like UND to make their big step to become an MVFC and national championship contender, you need every little recruit, every little advantage you can get, and you can't lose it. And they were just 1 play, 2 plays, 1 player or 2 players away from being an elite team last year. So if they lose recruits in this recruiting cycle because they have some restrictions on when they can be recruiting players, well, that's an issue. And so if you ask a coach, I can assure you, if you ask a college football coach, particularly at the FCS level, what these penalties thrown down on UND would do, how much it would hurt if it were their program, I can assure you with full confidence, they might say something like, it's not anything other than a warning to make sure they don't do something else. The reduction in official visits is nothing. The 1-week unofficial ban during the season, now that is what could be somewhat of a hit if UND, if they forced UND to do it during a home game where you would host the recruits. But it just doesn't say that. So if you're UND, you pick 3 weeks where you're on the road and you're not having recruits on campus anyway, and you sidestep that penalty. But if you are truly not able to communicate during the first week of the transfer portal or host visits, that creates a challenge. Again, if you ask an FCS coach how hard it would hit them, what it would make a difference in, I can assure you that a coach would say, not being able to communicate during the first week of the transfer portal or host visits creates a challenge. How big of a challenge? It's hard to measure, but imagine that. The schools are tampering anyway. And then everybody hits the ground running when the transfer portal window opens. And everybody's out to get them. Some teams have a different number of transfers coming in. But if you need those different making spots, either at a position where you just don't have much depth or it's just for a player that can put you over the top offensively or defensively. If UND loses a key potential transfer because they had a week where they couldn't even get a hold of him, and how many other schools are going after this coveted transfer that's in the portal, yeah, that creates a problem. You're kind of behind the eight ball. Doesn't mean it's impossible for you to get the transfer if they like what you're about. But you on so many transfers, you are a week behind in contacting them. So this would hit UND the hardest in January of 2027. This is something that hits them hard in grabbing players from the portal. Supposedly, you're difference-making players from the outside. That you're not really recruiting to develop. You're recruiting to hit the field now and make a difference. So 2027 would be where it would get hit at UND. If they were just to miss out 1, 2, or 3 difference makers in that class because of that 1 week in January 2027 when they can't talk to transfers who have jumped in the portal. So I guess the moral of all of this is it might not make hardly one bit of a difference at all. This is not SMU. This is not the death penalty. Football will go on. Eric Schmidt's going to be fine. Most parents, most recruits, they understand this was a slap on the wrist thing. Probation means they're just watching you a little extra close. Most people know that every school is tampering and breaking the law, but that 1 week in January 2027, again, for a program that last year, all 5 regular season losses by 5 or fewer points, and 3 of them were to national title contenders. Losing a 1 or 2 or 3 recruits potentially could be the difference between, being an elite national championship contender and being a first-round playoff exit loss. By the way, the UND 2026 schedule, the Hawks, with this violation, this penalty, doesn't really affect their on-field performance in 2026. They got the recruits and the players they got. Their roster isn't hit right now. I took a look at their schedule today. Okay, they're good. They're on the uptick. They're a much harder team to beat. The Jacks and the Yotes and the Bison all beat them by 5. That coin flip fourth quarter games could have gone either way. The Jacks have a favorable schedule this year. I think they're the MVFC favorites with Chase Mason coming back. They're national title contenders. The Yotes, Matt Zimmer did a story on this that came out on Friday. Their schedule is rough. I mean, SDSU doesn't have any opponents back-to-back without some sort of a buffer. None of their tougher opponents, none of the MVFC contenders are on back-to-back weeks where they play 2 toughies in a row. They have a bye week in between 2 of their toughest games, but they get a lot of warm-ups against blowout teams for their bigger games. 2026 for UND, I mean, it looks like they're going 5-1 with only a loss at Nebraska, their money game. And we know the Huskers are still susceptible to losing to just about anybody. But we'll give the Huskers the nod on that one. UND is going to be a favorite in its other 5 of its first 6 games. And then how's this for a home stretch to UND's season? Home to SDSU, at USD, at Youngstown and Bo Brumgard, Illinois State and Southern Illinois at home to finish. The 5, what should be toughest teams on their MVFC slate, they finish with 3 at home, 2 on the road. Schedule-wise, it doesn't set up impossibly for UND. It's not good. They're going to get beat up. Whether they win or lose, they're getting beat up consecutively by SDSU, at USD, and at Youngstown State. And even though they get Illinois State and Southern Illinois at home to finish the season, how healthy will they be at that point? And how mentally drained will they be at that point after playing the Jacks, the Yotes, and Bo Brumgard on consecutive weeks in October late in the season? UND feels like even though they're getting better commits and they are taken more seriously and NDSU is out of the FCS picture, they still very much feel like, again, another 7-5 or so team based off their schedule. And 2027 is now going to be a potentially slightly harder season to break through into the class of the elites because of this light but heavy enough penalty for a violation coming from the NCAA that makes the NCAA look worse and like bigger clowns than the University of North Dakota.